All right, so this is a quarterly meeting of the NGO Government Roundtable on Embodied Carbon. And my name is Andrew Himes. I'm the Director of Collective Impact and Communications for the Carbon Leadership Forum. So a little description first, the Embodied Carbon NGO and Government Roundtable, we got this off the ground about, let's see, it was in the fall of 2019. And since then, we've been meeting on a regular quarterly basis, and the numbers of organizations have grown dramatically during that period of time. More and more focus on embodied carbon and addressing the complete and balanced decarbonization of the built environment over these past few years. I think you've all seen the same really remarkable growth in consciousness, awareness, and then collective action to address embodied carbon. So the objectives of the NGO Government Roundtable are the following. We want to share news, strategic plans, resources, and tools related to embodied carbon. We want to report planning and future dates for conferences, webinars, and meetings. We want to inspire and facilitate ongoing communication and conversation among key leaders related to embodied carbon. And finally, we want to encourage convergence on shared embodied carbon terminology, data standards, benchmarks, and targets for embodied carbon reduction. And typically these meetings they consist of a whole series of relatively short and carefully thought through presentations by a large number of people. So we try to be relatively disciplined about that. There are a few people who are here for the first time representing new organizations, and those few people I've asked to speak for a little bit longer than the average 2 to 3 minutes, just to introduce the organization that you represent and to talk about your mission and how it connects with the larger goals of this roundtable. But most of the participants in the meeting will be focused on providing a brief summary of the most important events in your sphere or part of your organization's programs and objectives related to embodied carbon. And secondly, make sure that you provide also links in the chat window to resources, web pages, documents that you're referring to, and so on. And those notes in the chat window will be invaluable in creating a great record of the meeting so that others can follow up after the meeting with you and with your peers. Also, within a relatively short period of time, typically a day or two, we get the video recording of the meeting posted up on the CLF community, and I'll be sending out links to the notes and to the video recording as well. So to get started, with all the boxes on the screen, it's difficult for me to tell who is in the meeting at any particular time. So I've got to be looking at faces if I possibly can and names to call on people. If you feel comfortable doing so, we would love it if you turn on your video so that we can see the face of the folks who are in the meeting. It's really a great way to humanize this relatively sterile environment of little boxes on the screen. So thank you for doing that. Also, at the very beginning of the meeting here, would you please, if you can, type into the chat window your name and the location that you're at in the world, and then the name of the organization that you represent, to share it with everybody else. And that will also be part of the record of the meeting. So the very first thing on the agenda this morning, we've got Michelle Lambert from the Carbon Leadership Forum staff, who is going to give us a short report on a really inspiring and significant project that the CLF is one of many partners in the industry collaborating on. The name of the program is the Embodied Carbon Harmonization. And I think I got that wrong, Michelle. I'm going to let you describe what the acronym is, because I can remember all 4 of the words, but sometimes I get 2 of them mixed up. So go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, just fine.
Okay, great. I was just, and I don't know if Andrew, I don't have slides, but I thought maybe we could just pull up the Echo Project website.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that, or?
I will, you start talking and I will.
Okay. That sounds great. So Yes, so ECHO stands for the Embodied Carbon Harmonization and Optimization Project. And I should introduce myself as well. So my name is Michelle Lambert. I joined the CLF National Staff about 4 months ago now, and am now the staff person from the CLF side that is leading the collaboration of the ECHO project. So prior to my joining, about a year ago now, a number of organizations. So if Andrew, you scroll down a little bit, you can see all of the various organizations that came together, really with the what it says on the website, unprecedented collaboration between all of these convening organizations that you see on the left, as well as all of the participating organizations that you see on the right, many of whom I see faces are on this meeting today. And I just also want to invite anyone after I give an intro to join in and give any additional information. But so all these organizations met with the goal of working towards collaboration and harmonization of embodied carbon reporting, both for commitment programs as well as some of the rating systems. So you'll see Architecture 2030 on there, ILFI, USGBC, Building Transparency. Representing a number of different commitment programs where project teams sign up to report embodied carbon, as well as some of the rating systems like LEED and the Living Building Challenge, which are collecting embodied carbon data. Essentially to work across all of these different frameworks and reporting schemas and try to create some alignment. Vincent Martinez from Architecture 2030 was originally convening the group for about 9 months. And then about when I joined, we transitioned to CLF leading the group. It is very much a collaboration, and we are really, see ourselves as the conveners of this group. And we'll be continuing to meet throughout 2024 to work on refining and completing a couple of things, hopefully for communication to the public in the next couple of months. We have the reporting schema, which Katie Poss from Building Transparency, who's here, is leading, working really hard to get a draft published in the first quarter of 2024. And then we are also working on a framework document with all of these various organizations to come to some agreement on how everyone is collecting the embodied carbon data for projects. So that was kind of a quick overview. I don't know if Vince or Katie or anyone else wants to jump in and say something about, additional about the project or its initial, genesis or where we are. But
Sure, Michelle, this is Vince at Architecture 2030. Just want to thank the Wholesome Foundation for Sustainable Development, the Columbia University, and the Blackstone Ranch Institute for the funders to help bring these folks together. It makes it sound really amazing when we say it's on a historic collaboration. I think that's true for the U.S. on this particular topic, but I know my colleagues, many of you are there from Europe and the U.K. have been doing some really amazing collaborations as well. So I just want to recognize that was happening in addition, and to say that I think they have different genesis and different origins and different intents, though, from, like, for example, the built environment carbon database work in the UK. So this effort was really about recognizing that many industry organizations were tracking embodied carbon for reporting purposes for professional commitments that Michelle mentioned. And the intention here is to make sure that these projects are interdisciplinary, and that climate action should be interdisciplinary, and we should be harmonizing and optimizing our use of time and our efforts about what we're trying to achieve, with the recognition that it's also not just buildings, but the broader built environment, including infrastructure and landscapes. And so I'm really pleased that we have such a broad coalition of folks involved in the ECHO partnership and looking at how we make sure that we use the best resources that we have and the best use of time as we're starting to look at all the information about this reporting. So it's very different intent than, for example, that built environment carbon database effort in Europe, which is really trying to help inform policy, with appropriate data, not just projects. So I just want to be clear that this was not meant to or intended at all at this point to be a policy-driven effort. It's really about for professional stakeholders and their industry commitments.
Great, thank you so much, Vince. As you said, this is really exciting. It's literally an historic collaboration, probably representing the broadest number of participants from across the building industry and a variety of different organizations. It's really fantastic and inspiring to see this alignment taking place. So thank you so much for that first presentation. And now I'd like to call on Christina Valdivieso. Excuse me, I'm just butchering your name. Valdivieso from the Regeneration Field Institute down in South America, in Latin America. Christina, would you please go ahead and share with us what your organization is all about?
Hi, Andrew. Yes, thank you. And I would also like to introduce Beth Huggins. She's my colleague at the Regeneration Field Institute. And we actually have some slides we want to present to you guys.
Great.
Yeah, if I could get access to sharing my screen.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you.
We can see it. Great.
All right. All right. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Hello. My name is Beth Huggins. I'm the program director at the Regeneration Field Institute and a materials engineer from the United States.
Hi, and I'm Christina Valdivieso. I'm the design associate for the Regeneration Field Institute and an Ecuador-based architect passionate about carbon negative building and bamboo.
We are really excited to be here today and really grateful for the Carbon Leadership Forum arranging this meeting. We're here today to talk about our work with bamboo and really its role from carbon sequestration to storage. So a little bit more about our story. We began our work with bamboo after a 7.8 magnitude earthquake that devastated coastal Ecuador in 2016. After collaborating with communities to rebuild seismically safe houses with bamboo, we discovered another value bamboo could bring, which was to restore degraded soil, land, and ecosystem. In the province of Manabí, only 2.23% of the primary forest exists today. Mostly monocropped industrial agriculture and cattle farms are in its place. And this causes a lot of environmental challenges that we see affecting communities day to day. We see flooding, sedimentation of waterways, the loss of wildlife. And by utilizing bamboo to regenerate landscapes, we see a huge potential for local farmers to diversify income and land management practices while producing more bamboo to supply for future construction demands. I'll pass it over to Christina to talk more about bamboo.
Thank you, Beth. So I want to share some facts about bamboo and why we love this amazing plant, especially for construction. So the first thing is that bamboo grows really fast. Bamboo is considered a giant grass, and so harvesting for construction occurs around 4 to 6 years old of the plant. So it has a really fast growth cycle. After harvest, the plant continues to regenerate, and because of this, bamboo is considered a carbon negative material. It is a very strong and resilient plant. In fact, colloquially, it's known as the green steel. And it is also, in fact, stronger than steel when you consider its compression strength per weight properties. It also enhances soil health by preventing erosion, storing carbon, and also creates habitats for birds, insects, and endangered mantled howler monkeys. Lastly, it can sequester carbon at a rate of up to 400 tons of carbon per hectare over a growth cycle. A growth cycle is around 7 to 9 years. And in comparison, a fast-growing tree plantation might sequester around 100 to 200 tons of carbon per hectare over a similar period. And next, please. So knowing all these facts about bamboo and how amazing and resilient it is, we as an institution want to change the narratives that exist around it, one project at a time. There exists a negative attitude towards bamboo, both locally and internationally, as the poor man's timber. It is our mission to change this reputation around this incredible biomaterial, and to do that, we partner with local communities, NGOs, and government institutions to design and build needed projects that they need to do their day-to-day work. And we build them with bamboo, so we can demonstrate bamboo's innate characteristics. And in this way, we slowly change the way people think about bamboo and start considering it a viable material to replace concrete or steel. And now I'm going to pass it back to Beth.
So in addition to working really closely with local Ecuadorian communities, we also know it's important to train the next generation of environmental leaders around the globe. We host short-term field-based learning programs, which are dedicated to getting students outside of the classroom and lab and into the real world. So we partner with US colleges and student organizations, both in Ecuador and across North America. We also look for research partnerships from topics of soil health to regenerative agroforestry to engineered bamboo materials and more. And lastly, we host technical workshops with local community partners on farming practices, agroforestry, regenerative agriculture, soil health, and bamboo construction. Our work is dependent on collaborators both locally and internationally. We are always seeking further connections to institutions and research related to our work. And so if you know of opportunities, we are open to those and would gladly love to hear from any of you. We'll make sure to post our website and our email into the chat. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Great, thank you. And now we'll move on to ULI, and I know that we've got Kara Kokernak, and also, and I think I saw Morgan Maloney on the call as well. But Kara, why don't you start? And Morgan, if you're here as well, just join in when.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Morgan and I can give a quick overview. Morgan, you can pop in if I miss anything. My name is Kara Kokernak, Senior Director on the Decarbonization Team in the Center for Sustainability at ULI. Embodied carbon remains one of our main campaigns for decarbonization. In terms of an update of what we have going on recently, we held our ULI fall meeting in LA in October, and we had a demystifying embodied carbon workshop. It was about a little over 2-hour workshop. We had over 100 participants, which is pretty large for that type of event. It was really exciting. And we can share any summary information with the group via a link. We also are currently working on a new, it's not necessarily a report, but it is a document or resource, an intervention points in embodied carbon resource, where we are putting together a timeline of all the different players and all the different potential intervention points to incorporate and implement embodied carbon reduction in real estate projects. So we are currently working on that. Happy to hear any thoughts or ideas. We will be sending out some drafts to folks. And if you're interested in reviewing some of those drafts, we are happy to share it with you. But that is really in the beginning phases now. The intention is to have that ready at some point in the summer, and that will likely coincide with what will be our third embodied carbon convening. We're planning that third embodied carbon convening the first week in June to coincide with folks being in town for the AIA conference in DC. And I've chatted about this before on previous calls, but our first embodied carbon convening, we invited developers and the construction industry. The second embodied carbon convening, we invited concrete and steel suppliers to the table. And now for our third embodied carbon convening, we are bringing architects and engineers to the table. So that's why we're coinciding it with the AIA conference. So we're really excited about that. In the early stages of planning that convening, we'll certainly update the group. The plan is also to highlight that intervention point resource at the convening and get feedback from players live during our convening, and then publish it shortly thereafter. So we have those 3 things moving through, really exciting. Happy to get any feedback, and we'll certainly share with the group as those become more than just drafts. Did I miss anything, Morgan?
Nope, I think you're good. And I dropped a link to the slides from the Embodied Carbon workshop in the chat.
Awesome. Thank
Great.
you.
All right, thank you so much, Morgan and Kara. And now we've got Ankita Gangotra from WRI.
In DC, so in the right time zone. As part of the work that WRI has been doing on embodied carbon and industrial decarb, I have one main update really. Over the last year, we've been working on strengthening the ties between US domestic efforts and international initiatives when it comes to cement and steel. And to that end, in Q4 of last year, we launched the Forum for International Green Industry. So the current format of the forum is really a monthly newsletter covering international efforts of interest to the US related to cross-border developments in green cement and steel. The aim really is to facilitate an exchange of information between these international initiatives, the US policymaking scene, and also the industry landscape. So the newsletter has a link for contributions and things that we might have missed every month. And I'd encourage you all to subscribe. I'll post a link in the chat. And I'd also encourage you to contribute and help this forum grow. The next newsletter comes out next week. And yeah, that's it from me.
Great, thank you so much, Ankita. And now we've got Peter Backus from the EPA. Now you've moved organizations, Peter. You were formerly at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and you've got a new job. So tell us a little bit about your new job and give us a sense of what's happening up there.
Yeah, so thank you for having me once again. Like Andrew said, my name is Peter Backus. I used to be an in-house consultant for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey in their construction management and materials engineering divisions. Now I'm working over at the US EPA, working on their IRA implementations associated with Section 60112, which is the EPD grant and technical assistance, and Section 60116, which is the carbon labeling program. So, a few quick updates on what we're doing. We just had our notice of funding opportunity close 2 days ago. We received over 100 applications for this grant. That's before eligibility checks went through, so we'll be going through that over the next coming weeks and hope to make announcements on successful applicants in the late spring time frame of this year. We also have 2 webinars coming up, and I need to admittedly find the links, so it'll be a little bit until I can find the links, but we have a webinar coming up on February 1st outlining EPA's carbon label program approach. That will then also be going out for public comment. And a week later, on February 8th, we'll be going over EPA's efforts on PCRs to date, as well as introducing EPA's PCR criteria that we'll be using for the carbon labeling program so that we can have assurance that PCRs are being developed in the same fashion for materials that are part of our carbon labeling program. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you very much, Peter. And now we've got Bruce King from BuildWell. Tell us all about the video series and exciting things happening at BuildWell. Bruce.
Good morning. I'm excited to announce that after 40 years of being a structural engineer, I figured out that what I really want to do is make movies. So that's what I'm doing now. In embodied carbon, a lot of us have been messing around in this space for a long time now, and the urgency has grown rapidly as we realize how important it is to climate. Having written a few books, some articles, and spoken a bit, it finally dawned on me that most people aren't reading books anymore and not making it to conferences, not even hearing about CLF. That people are too busy, and the great bulk of people in our professions, architects, engineers, builders, aren't getting the word. And likewise, in academia, climate positive design is missing, almost entirely missing in action at virtually every university in the world. And I talked to my friends in academia. So with that in mind, we set out with a bit of seed funding some 9 months ago to make short videos of the type that are engaging and provide people the gist of a concept. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit with climate-friendly design, that you can get the idea across in just a few minutes. And so we set out to do that. And we will also be developing PowerPoint decks that teachers can use in academia to reach more people than we've been reaching so far, because books aren't cutting it, and neither are conferences. I'll put a link in the website. We're launching our first 3 today on our YouTube channel. And one is by our own Aaron McDade of Architecture 2030 on reuse of existing buildings, probably the most important topic in the space. And one by myself on low carbon concrete, a longer one. It's 13 minutes. Some of you have seen it already because it sort of sneaked out a few weeks ago, but that's also a big topic. But we've got coming up Chris Magwood of RMI on carbon storing buildings, Pamela Conrad on carbon storing landscape, and Edminster on electrification, and more. And we're going to be making a lot more videos in the year to come. If you have ideas of things that you and your organization want to do, contact me. We're happy to make them for you. But the idea is to reach outside the choir. We are the choir here on this screen, more or less, and a few of our colleagues, but we have to reach much further out than that and reach all the architects and engineers and builders who are so busy just trying to make payroll and get through the day and deal with the onslaught of information we all deal with every day. Reach them with short video, because everybody will watch a short video. They won't read a book, they won't read a paper, they may not even go to a webinar. But if you can give them the basic idea and a short pitch, then they have the idea, and then people can find out that they can make a difference, that they can actually be part of the solution to climate rather than just freaking out about it like most of us do, and all of us do once in a while. That's the gist. We're announcing it to all of you and many others, and count on you. Like us, link us, all the usual stuff on social media.
So the next person on our organization on our agenda, I'd like Alex Krauka from the U.S. Energy Association to come on the line and tell us something about DOE's carbon utilization program, procurement grants program, and anything else that you have to report. So Alex.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Andrew. My name is Alex Krauka. I'm a consultant for the U.S. Energy Association. I'm based in Seattle. USEA is based in D.C. USEA has a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy to help support DOE's efforts. One of those efforts is what is being billed as the UP Grants program, which stands for Utilization Procurement Grants. It is one of the programs through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that represents about $310 million of investment over 5 years. One of the goals of which is to promote the utilization or recycling, if you will, of carbon oxides. So this procurement program, or procurement grant program, is a demonstration grant program that requires 50% cost share. Eligible entities include states, local governments, public utilities, and agencies. And you can use these grants to procure and use commercial or industrial products that are derived from anthropogenic carbon oxides that have fewer greenhouse gas emissions than the incumbent technology, and vendors of which must pass a critical review. They need to submit their LCA to the National Energy Technology Laboratory. But if they have an EPD, from what I'm told, that's about 70% of the process or so. There's a variety of methods that are allowable under this grant program, but obviously the ones I think of most interest to this group include cured concrete blocks, synthetic aggregates, suboxides, and other building materials. I think some of the advantages and challenges are that it can be energetically downhill, but it can apply at gigaton scale. It's mostly enabled with catalog engineering, using COTS equipment. You can address other waste streams such as produced water or mine tailings, and products often have a low specific value, and the fact that dollars per ton require a large scale. So I would say from kind of the private sector view of things, this is a good, I would say, business development opportunity for those who have state and local governments and public agencies as their clients. And for those eligible entities for the grants themselves, I think this is a good way for them to help reduce costs through various sustainability and greening initiatives, particularly through embodied carbon and building materials. So thank you for having me, and appreciate the time.
Great, thanks very much, Alex. And next up on our agenda is Katie Poss from Building Transparency. What's up with Building Transparency, which when I know from direct understanding or experience that Building Transparency is now just over, I think, 4 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Or is it maybe 5 years?
I think that's true, Andrew. Yep. I think it was 2019, if I'm not mistaken, so almost 5 years.
Yes,
might have to check my facts on that one.
The EC3 tool was first introduced at the Green Build conference in the fall of 2019 in Atlanta, I think. And now 5 years on, oh my God, the world has shifted dramatically, hasn't it? And tell us what's the most recent stuff that you guys are working on in addition to the ECHO project.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Andrew. I lost you there at the end, but hi everyone. I'm program manager with Building Transparency, and I wanted to provide some updates this morning on the EC3 front. We've been very busy lately, as I'm sure many of you have. We did submit a proposal for the EPA grant on Tuesday, so we're glad to have that submitted and behind us. A couple of things on the EC3 front, though. I wanted to talk about the new CLF 2023 material baselines. We do have phase 1 of those baselines implemented in EC3. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay, Andrew.
Yep. There you go.
Still can't.
I think I just gave you that permission. I'll
There we go. Okay.
one more time. You got it?
So we put together. Yep, got it. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So if some of you are familiar or have had exposure to the CLF baselines, in 2023, there were some changes in the methodology. So we put together an EC3 implementation plan for the 2023 baseline values, which outlines some of those changes and how we've approached implementation in EC3. So you can find that on our website by going to buildingtransparency.org and then clicking on resources at the top, and then documents, and then scroll down and you'll see the CLF 2023 implementation plan here. I want to show you a couple of additional new features in EC3. If you are in any building project and you want to change the baseline values to reference the 2023, you can just click on this gear icon on the top right corner of the project and then change the baseline values. You can still reference 2019 and 2021 if you wish, but you'll see the 2023 industry averages are now in the system. When I say phase 1 has been implemented, there are some of the material baseline values in the 2023 report that have not yet been implemented, and those are primarily the ones with the regional component. So for example, the NRMCA regional benchmarks, the Canadian regional benchmarks for ready mix concrete, and I believe the CMU benchmarks from Canada. We're working on building out some additional functionality and features to support that regional component. So stay tuned for those remaining baselines to be implemented. I also wanted to provide some updates on the policy front. we have now built out some policy compliance filters for both the FEMA and GSA IRA policies. And if you want to search for EPDs that are compliant with those GWP limits, you can just go into any impacted material category. That would be ready mix concrete, steel, glass, or asphalt. So I'm just going to show you how I would apply that filter. Let's say I'm looking at a ready mix concrete mix. You'll notice that there is a compliance dropdown with a number of options now. You can see FEMA 2023 IRA that's broken out by compressive strength, as well as several GSA options. If you all are familiar with this policy or the IRA funding requirements, you'll know that GSA has implemented a tiered approach. So they're really hoping to get the best or top performing 20% of products where possible. If those aren't available, they're looking for the best 40%. And if those are not available, better than average. So we have all of those filters built out to support you with finding compliant EPDs.
Okay.
Some other news on the policy front, we've been supporting New York State with implementation of their Executive Order 22, as well as New York City with their Executive Order 23. We've been working with them to develop a public reporting template in EC3 and some resources to support impacted contractors and impacted agencies with complying with those policies. And then finally, on the policy front, we have also developed a new report. Some of you are probably aware that we implement uncertainty factors into EC3 based on the quality of the background data that's used to develop an EPD. But there are several policies that are choosing to just use the reported values from EPDs without uncertainty factored in. So we've added a new policy report, reported GWP as you see here. And I already have an example downloaded that I wanted to show you. So what you'll see here in column I is there's actually the reported GWP value directly from the EPD. But we've also included columns to show the specificity of the background data and how we arrive at the uncertainty factor that's actually added into an individual EPD in EC3. So whether you're working with policymakers or maybe even owners or clients who are interested in learning more about how we account for uncertainty in EC3, I think this is a really great tool to help sort of visualize how those factors are, how we arrive at those factors. Another big push that we have for Q1 of this year is material category updates. We're working to make several material categories that are currently in pilot. We're working to make those public. Those include precast concrete, elevators, applied fireproofing, brick, and tiling. And we're working on building out a number of new material categories, such as piping. And last on the EC3 front, I did want to let you all know that we have migrated our user guide to a new platform, which we think is cleaner and a bit more easier to use and navigate. And that is in a platform called Gitbook. So if you want to access that, click on the gear icon on the very top right of EC3 and click on resources, which will take you to the BT website. Click on user guide, click user guide again. And then here is the new user guide. You can also directly access it through docs.buildingtransparency.org. I realize I've got a number of links and I'll add these to the chat when I'm done talking. That's it on the EC3 front, but I did want to switch gears and put on my California Straw Building Association board member hat and let you all know that there is a call for participants for a new PCR that's being developed for agricultural and annually renewable fibers, including straw, hemp, and potentially bamboo. So I'll drop the link in the chat for that. If you're interested in joining that PCR committee, I would encourage you to apply.
Mhm.
And that is all I have, Andrew. Thank you.
Wow, Katie, that's all you have? Oh my God. I mean, that's kind of an extraordinary report. And it reflects the remarkable increasing sophistication and breadth of the EC3 tool, the vast growth in EPDs in that database, and then all the work that you're doing to support policymakers. It's just kind of extraordinary. So thank you for that report. Next up on our agenda, Mia Kitahara from Stop Waste. And I don't see Maria Hart with you, I think, this morning, but please go right ahead.
I'm
Thanks,
here.
Oh, you are. There you are. Okay,
Sure.
great.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah. Thanks for the chance to share a couple of things that we've been doing. We've been working with ERA on a couple projects. One is on bio-based materials. So we had them do in this past year a report on the most kind of viable potential bio-based materials. Let's see, I'm trying to put the link in the chat. We just hosted it on the CLF Bay Area website. So it's available there. And their conclusion was straw, fire risk wood, hemp, and bamboo. So it was great to see the Regeneration Field Institute presentation to kick this meeting off. And we were looking really for kind of economically viable products too, in addition to carbon storing, to create economic opportunities in our region and in California. So that's the first one. And the second one that we're working on with them is an embodied carbon quantification calculator tool to support state, regional, and local governments who are working on climate action plans. So this tool is supposed to estimate baseline or business as usual EC for construction within the jurisdiction. So like at the kind of more macro level, not project-based, but just the construction across a jurisdiction, and then to estimate the potential EC reduction impact for different government interventions, so policies, codes, or incentives targeting certain building types or materials or reduction strategies. So the current target use case is recipients of the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which is separate from the EPA EC grants that Peter talked about. And if people aren't familiar with that, I'll put that in the chat too later. But basically 46 states and 79 metro regions are developing new climate action plans at the same time. And embodied carbon is typically omitted because of just the inventory protocols. So we're trying to fix that and give them the resources they need to be able to quantify the required baseline and reduction potential by strategy. So yeah, this is building on CLF's Carbon Calculator Case Study project, as well as a project ERA did for NRDC. I think I saw Lauren Kubiak on the call for the California case. And we're welcoming data sources to kind of ground the calculator's inputs from real projects also, because this is kind of scaling up project level data to jurisdictional scale. But yeah, it's only as good as the data input that we're able to put in. That I don't have a link to share for because we're just developing it now, but happy to put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mia, for that presentation. And the next person on our agenda is Jessica. Oh, yeah, one more.
Andrew, if I could just add, if anybody is tracking CPRG, participants and their work and the priority climate action plans and the implementation proposals for the $4.3 billion, and you hear somebody working on EC, please connect them with us so we can support them. Thanks.
Great, thanks.
Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry about that.
That's great. And Jessica Bristow from ILFI, the International Living Futures Institute. What's up? And the last time I saw you was just a couple of months ago in Washington, D.C. for that really amazing panel on the Embodied Carbon Harmonization and Optimization Project. And this extraordinary picture on the front page of the Echo Project website with 7 women in a row, all presenting together, probably the first woman-only panel in the history of ASHRAE. So it was a great pleasure to be there in that room for that historic meeting. Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, definitely. Great, thank you. Yeah, that was a great panel and good to see some of those faces on this call too. Hi everyone, it's great to see you all. My name is Jessica Bristow and I'm the director of Living Building Challenge, Zero Energy and Zero Carbon. So basically all of ILFI's building certification programs at ILFI. We've been really busy over here, as I mentioned, lots of conferences, panels, ongoing work with all these familiar faces, ECHO project around the steering committee that Michelle mentioned at the top of the call. EPA funding submission is in. Also happy, like similar to Katie, happy to have that off our plate and very excited to see where that goes. Shout out to Peter on the call. And our work on that we're submitting is for carbon labeling through ILFI's transparency labels. And then we also working with New York State on their embodied carbon policy development, like Katie Foss also mentioned. We're also participating in the DOE Zero Emissions Definition Review, which is open now for comment. And on top of all this, we're launching point one updates to all of our buildings programs this spring. And this is actually a perfectly timed meeting. Our high-level public review of these proposed updates opens on Monday. So we will be posting the intents and requirements of LBC 4.1, the proposed updates for that, Zero Carbon 1.1, Zero Energy 1.1 on our website. So it will also be going out on our social media and in our newsletters. So keep an eye on that. It'll be a link starting on Monday at the top of the banner on our ILFI homepage. And we'd love to hear anyone's feedback and comments on that. Also, a quick plug, and then I'll wrap it up, is that our Living Future 24 conference is fast approaching. It will be in Atlanta this year from May 7th to 9th. And the lineup is really exciting. So I'll put the link in the chat, but we'd love to see everyone there. And there will be an Embodied Carbon Summit. There'll be a lot of sessions focused on that work. And I think that wraps it up for us, but we're cranking away and really excited to see all the alignment happening and that we're doing these updates in part with that to keep everything moving and aligned on the standard side from ILFI. So we're plugged in and really excited to have the traction that we've seen.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. And I noticed that Tracy Nguyen from RMI has joined us also, and I had you earlier on the agenda, but please go right ahead right now if you would, and tell us what's happening in your amazing part of the world.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. If you could, I have a couple slides to share. So I'll just wait for that permission in the meantime. But hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Nguyen, a senior associate on the Embodied Carbon team at RMI. We're part of the Carbon Free Buildings program and got some exciting updates this time around. I think a lot of what I shared last time was on things in progress, but since then things have been published. So I'll run through them fairly quickly. One update is on the ResNet standard 1550. That is an ANSI standard to measure embodied carbon emissions in residential homes. And the purpose of it will be, and its development will be aligning the methodology with the modeling done by energy raters. And the technical advisory task group is fully formed and very busy. We've broken into 5 distinct working groups focused on materials, LCA, data strategy, and HERS alignment strategy. And the Standard Development Committee, the formal consensus body that will vote on the standard, is officially appointed. So we are full speed ahead, developing the language and the draft language for the standard to be reviewed by the SDC. We're hoping to have a version of that by middle of this year, and trying to get it out to public comment towards the end of this year. So stay tuned on that. Hopefully we'll have an update, an exciting update the next 1 or 2 roundtable meetings. Another update in the home builders sphere is Home Builders Can, a supportive action network. It's a new initiative that we're standing up to help builders learn about embodied carbon and provide the industry with a consistent approach to incorporating their embodied carbon strategies in aspects of corporate reporting or general wanting to improve the performance of their homes. This is in tandem with the ResNet standard. As the standard gets developed, it'll be a good tool for a good basis for all of the home builders participating in the program to measure their embodied carbon. So the website's up and running. We did quite some outreach towards the end of last year at the EBA Summit, at the FIAS and ResNet conferences. If you've seen Chris Magwood, he's been doing a lot of the work there on that front. And we hosted an introductory webinar in last November that's also available online, the recording, in case that you wanted to view it. We've got a good collection of early supporters, and we're just working out the details to launch it sometime soon this year, targeting sometime in February or March. So Once that's launched, there'll be a website refresh and a formal way to sign on as a builder or as a consultant to the program. Another update is the publication of an embodied carbon and ESG primer. This is an insight brief where we summarize how embodied carbon fits into the ESG reporting landscape, specifically for the real estate sector. So it makes the case for why Scope 3 is important to report in ESG, what the investors landscape looks like for that, how embodied carbon is even reflected in ESG today, and touches on paths to zero and science-based targets. So that's published, available on our website, and I'll provide a link in the chat after this. Another publication is a report that we did in collaboration with USGBC, and I think we touched on this last time as a report in the making, and the difference now is that it's a report that has been published. So for those who are unfamiliar, it's a synthesis of our current understanding of embodied carbon today, with the aim to try to answer any of the questions that where people are getting stuck and really encourage action from various stakeholders in the buildings industry. Published, and I'll provide a link to that in the chat as well. In parallel, we're also been busy organizing workshops with the DOT. So this is a workshop series with state departments of transportation on the procurement of low embodied carbon building materials. 3 workshops have been hosted so far, looking at the needs of these departments, specific topics like limestone, calcium, clay, cement, and currently we're organizing the next workshop, which is going to be focused on DOT specifications. And finally here, a relatively new project we kicked off with the Colorado Mass Timber Coalition with the Gates Family Foundation. What we're looking at here specifically is focused on demand activation. So what that could mean in other terms is we want to stimulate wood product supply chains in Colorado, specifically by utilizing low value, small diameter trees from ecologically motivated harvests. And that's a bit of a mouthful, but ideally these lower value fibers are coming from efforts to manage the forest to increase forest health, among other benefits like community development. And we're currently in phase 1 of the project, with our deliverables being 2 reports, a value proposition brief and a product market fit report. So more updates on that in the next round. And then we've got a number of things in the pipeline, and I don't need to go to it in too much detail, but we've got an exciting carbon storing materials study in buildings, and some case studies in the pipeline that we'll hope to publish sometime in the first half of this year. A lot of market activation pilots that are being planned with the Colorado Energy Office and also with Arias Earth. A bunch of things on the policy front, including Massachusetts cohorts and the Colorado Energy Office, and a collaboration with CLF on a roadmap for climate aligned emission targets. And of course, continued research on our investment guide, specifically looking at green bonds and book and claim approach. So that is a wrap for me. Victor, jump in if I missed anything, but otherwise I'll post some links in the chat shortly. Thank you.
I think you got it all.
Fantastic. That was more than a mouthful. That was kind of an amazing list of projects and possibilities. So thank you very much for sharing that. And good to see you also, Victor, on the call this morning. Next on our agenda is Natalie Douglas, who has moved from a small but amazing city staff in British Columbia to the ZEBX, or excuse me, Zero Emissions Innovation Center. I got that a little bit wrong there, but Natalie, please take it away.
Yeah, all good. It's a little easier when we say Z in Canada. ZEEK is the name of the organization. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague because I've actually transitioned to a role that mostly focuses on reducing operational emissions, but don't worry, folks, I'm embedding embodied carbon content into all of my work. So I'm still on the same team. I kid, but I will pass things over to my colleague Stephanie Dallow, who is the new Carbon Leadership Forum BC lead, and she'll talk about some of the work that we're doing at our organization. So Stephanie, over to you.
I'm delighted to meet you this morning, Stephanie. Great to see you and welcome.
Great. Thank you. Great to see you. Great to see all those faces. Some new, some, I've been connected to on LinkedIn just because I've seen some great work. So expect a lot of you should expect some invites from me or requests to get connected. But I am grateful for Natalie to still be engaged in embodied carbon and so passionate about it, as am I. And I'm happy to have become the program manager for CLF BC. Just started really, jumped in full time just in the start of this month. And so CLF BC was originally kind of more of like CLF Vancouver, was run by a bunch of volunteers. And so the Zero Emissions Innovation Center, or ZEEC, is now powering CLF BC and, kind of brought it to kind of a larger, covering more of the region of British Columbia. And now the program manager role is a paid position. And so there's a lot of interest in certain deliverables or commitments we already have and projects we have undergoing, but there's a lot of room for growth and taking this and seeing how it can develop. So in the next year, we're going to really see where it can go. And if anybody is interested in collaborating or doing any kind of case study or webinar or any other kind of research work together, there's a lot of opportunity to explore that and perhaps collaborate together. But for some of the immediate things that are worth sharing, we have an Embodied Carbon Awards that are going to be held in April. And so that's already underway, where we have people applying to the Embodied Carbon Awards. There are 6 different categories. One is organizational commitment to change. One is public sector leadership. So there's 6 categories altogether. The third is strengthening the practice. And then there's one for large buildings, another for small buildings, and then one to commitment for commitment to circularity. And actually, I'm very interested in advancing circular economy in the built environment. And one of the things I'm really hoping to do, and I have some support, plenty of support actually from the team of ZEBEX, which Natalie is a program manager, and ZEEC as a whole, to see where we can take circularity or circular economy and see the relationship between embodied carbon reductions through these circular strategies. So with regards to the Embodied Carbon Awards, we have some lead judges, but we're really looking for some also like guest judges. And so I have some of you guys in mind actually, but I might be reaching out. And if anybody is interested in offering your expertise into the world of BC and the embodied carbon lens, if you're interested in judging any of the competitions, please feel free to just, make a mention of that, and I can reach out to you if you want to mention it in the chat, and I'll even drop my email address. And then the next thing I'll just say is there's ZEBEX and the city of Vancouver have initiated an applied research project on low-rise homes built to low embodied carbon standards. So that's called the Near Zero Stream 2 initiative. And so the goals are to identify existing solutions that can be implemented today for little or no premium cost, to identify materials with high embodied carbon that can be replaced with low carbon equivalents, to catalyze, inspire, and accelerate understanding related to construction and low embodied carbon homes, and to understand where education is needed for widespread adoption of low carbon embodied carbon homes. And so the idea there is for, in this research program, applicants would receive financial support for their projects to reduce their emissions. And they've set 200 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per meter squared baseline. And so the financial support can go up to $40,000, and that's to achieve like an 80% reduction to that baseline, or anywhere less than 40 kilograms of CO2e per meter squared. But anyways, maybe I'll leave it there. Natalie, did I miss anything major that you think is worth noting?
No, I think you covered everything. Thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks much, Stephanie and Natalie as well. And next on our agenda is now I see Irene Dominguez Perez from Bologna Europa on the call. So welcome. And I'll let you share your screen as well if you'd like to do that.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here as always. I won't need to share my screen, but I just briefly will remind you, for those of us who are not familiar with my organization, what Bologna Europa does. We are an environmental NGO focusing on industrial decarbonization and European climate policy. I thought it might be interesting to bring you the latest policy updates at the European level, because we have actually quite good news for embodied carbon. We recently saw the finalization of the legislative processes of the directive of the energy performance of buildings, which is the first time a legislation includes whole life carbon provisions. So this is great news for the uptake of low carbon products, especially low carbon materials, such as cement and steel. And there's now the introduction of global warming potential limits for all new buildings as of 2030. And there's, of course, the need for reporting on the global warming potential data as well, which is why I was so happy to hear that the EC3 tool is already able to filter by legislation. So there might be some work to be done there to expand in Europe, I think, which would be an incredible development. There's much need for a harmonization of data here and uptake of EPDs. And so on that note, there's also now another regulation that for construction products in particular, where manufacturers will be obliged to submit for the first time ever again environmental information in the form of EPDs or the European equivalent for that. So good news in terms of embodied carbon reporting in Europe, and very much looking forward to this work that is coming now. Right, we're also having European elections, so the parliament will be renewed as of 2024, May 2024. So that's also going to be a big change in the policy landscape, but hopefully we still see climate action for embodied carbon going forward. One of the things that Bologna will be focusing on, and in particular my team, will be green priority procurement as a tool to leverage the demand for low carbon materials and products and creating these lead markets that are much necessary here in Europe. So we're planning on creating a report summarizing the situation on green priority procurement in the EU as of March. So I will probably share with you once it's ready, if you're of course interested. And that's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much, Irene. And next on my list is Vincent Martinez from Architecture 2030. And whether you're planning to or not, Vincent, please tell us a little bit about, there was a really great article, a carbon positive article in The Architect recently about the COP meeting and the extraordinary list of folks who collaborated and worked with Architecture 2030 to make a difference there. And so tell us a little bit about that and anything else that you'd like to report on.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew, for the opportunity to address the group. Yes, Architecture 2030, like many other organizations that are represented on this call, took part in the UN climate conferences in Dubai in late November, early December of last year. Architecture 2030 had a very robust delegation, both virtually and in person this year, with a focus on 4 key themes. One is to invest in nature-based infrastructure, focusing, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, not just on buildings, but on the broader built environment and the opportunities available, not just for design professionals of buildings, but also those involved in the exterior built environment with infrastructure, urban planning, and landscapes. And those were really great opportunities for us to merge and bring in new ideas into the nature pavilions and nature-based solutions markets about how the built environment and built environment professionals can actually support their goals. So that was really one of our main themes. The other was on scaling up low carbon traditions, back to some of the topics that have been discussed earlier about low carbon alternatives with local vernacular and design strategies, but also with local materials that are nature-based. And this was really important in terms of bridging partnerships with heritage and culture-based organizations at COP. We had many events that took place in those pavilions. The third was on the priority use of existing buildings, and that has come up a bit in Bruce's comments and my colleague Aaron McDade in his videos with the Ecological Building Network, focusing on existing buildings. And this also has carryover into low carbon traditional building materials, that the greenest building is the building already built, and recognizing both operational emission reductions from renovating those buildings and also reducing the need for additional embodied carbon for new construction. Which was our fourth theme, was actually on embodied carbon and making sure that those were prevalent throughout the material sessions, not only in the buildings and business pavilion, but throughout the COP. So we had a delegation that included landscape architects, urban planners, building sector professionals, and architects and designers. I'm really pleased to be able to share some of the insights from our group, including essays from our virtual delegates as they were participating in various levels online. And so you can see in the link I shared here is our wrap up, giving you a state of what we think were the positives and negatives about the COP this year. But it was really important for us to be there and to have a presence and build relationships with allied organizations that have not traditionally been in the building space. But we know the built environment intersects all of these areas. So that's my brief update. And I'll also drop the article in that Andrew mentioned that's in Architect Magazine that has some of the highlights from our delegation.
Great. Thank you so much, Vincent. And next on our agenda is Luca Di Giovanetti from WBCSD. And if you would tell us something about the Market Transformation Action Agenda, and also the upcoming Global Building and Climate Forum in March. So take it away, please.
Hi, Andrew, and hi, everyone. Yeah, Luca De Giovanetti, WBCSD, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So yeah, just maybe first on the Market Transformation Action Agenda. So this is an initiative that we have been working now, well, started COP26, but specifically on this agenda was this year with various workshops. On the idea was, how do we accelerate action by overcoming the barrier, identifying and overcoming the barrier that are stopping the all work we are doing at the moment. So, I mean, everybody's doing a lot of effort. So how can we ensure that this is targeted and what can accelerate that? So identifying what are the barriers and how the collective actions that we are doing can address that, and what are the key things we would focus to achieve that. So I have here like the narrative that explain that, and let me see if I can do that. I will add after the information on the market transformation, but it's really kind of the idea was the key aspect that would accelerate the action is on one side, the life cycle thinking. So thinking, considering the all life carbon, embodied, operational, looking at the all emissions of buildings. This is what needs to happen, and the alignment on that. Many standards, many definitions. These are actually probably sometimes a barrier. So the harmonization and alignment on that is something that will benefit all. So this is really kind of, and so many efforts are scattered. So how can we create a collaboration on that? And so that's why it's a shared agenda. Another part is also the importance of the integrated carbon cost, thinking cost and carbon in the same way. And the other one is obviously the transforming the supply and demand dynamics, which is of course another aspect is we have a lot of supply of low carbon solutions. We need to ensure that there is an equal demand for it, but across the entire value chain of buildings, including the procurement, including the funding and so on. So, and what does it mean of all this? So what are the specific actions that align this? So this is an effort that we have been doing throughout the year, various workshops, 150 organizations that we have been engaging throughout the year. And we will present that now in March in Paris, this final output, and what are the actions that are aligned, linked to that. So this is one. So feel free to reach out if you are interested to learn more and collaborate. The other aspect that I promised Andrew I can quickly touch on is the Building and Climate Forum, which will take place on the 5th to the 8th of March in Paris. And this, I would say, builds on the building breakthrough that was presented at COP28, which will be finally announced and kind of the key recommendation announced during the forum. And the idea is to bring together, I think at the moment they have 40 countries that have signed, including US, including China, so, and many European countries and global countries as well. So this is really kind of what are the international collaboration effort that can align. So the building breakthrough was probably at COP28 in the biggest room that was there. It was quite a big show, but yeah, also a big spot for the built environment. So it was nice to see the built environment such high in the agenda. And this conference, I would say, is the first time that countries or minister responsible for building codes get together. So kudos to France to bring them together. And yeah, so there will be different events. So 5th and 6th is open for anyone that want to organize events to bring, having the opportunity to have people there, opportunity to organize events. That's reaching out to the organizer to host or to provide them, even they provide space in case you want to organize something. On the 7th, the forum will begin and is focusing on 20 different sessions addressing different topics across the entire buildings. And the 8th is the ministerial day where minister will discuss these specific points. So is probably the big opportunity this year for high-level representation of buildings in the political agenda global level. So if you are in Paris those days, feel free to register or at least express your interest to participate. And otherwise, yeah, hopefully there is other way to engage or inform about that. So I put the link in the chat, so if you want to have more information and want to register.
Great, thank you so much, Luca. And next on the agenda, I've got James Kitchen from Mass Design, and tell us something about the Northeast Biomaterials Summit and also about your Rwanda research and anything else that occurs that would be important for us to learn.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, is it possible to share my screen?
Yes, it is. And there you go.
Excellent. Well, it's amazing to see all of the work that's happening, just so much of it. I'm going to be super quick because I'm double booked and have been for 21 minutes, but this is where I'd rather be. So I'll try to be quick. So the first update is the Northeast Bio-Based Materials Summit, which we held with new frameworks in Boston in November. There were 60 attendees there from like hemp farmers from Idaho to insurance people from Boston, so it was like a huge range of people in the same room talking about bio-based materials and how we can scale them up. We've got a follow-up meeting where we're going to talk about the proceedings. Like we distilled about 700 sticky notes into some 3 pages of proceedings. So we'll present them on the 24th and I'll send a link in the chat. But I think like it was a really inspiring event. And yeah, hopefully some more work can come out of that. The second update I want to give is, I mean, over the last 3 years, a lot of my time has been spent doing this research project in Rwanda on embodied carbon. Like Africa is going to build more than anywhere else in the world in the next 40 years and get very, very little attention and money to do this sort of stuff. So worked with Ara, Field and Clegg Bradley, University of Rwanda to do this. So many highlights came out of this. I don't know where to, I pulled one from one of my learnings in particular, just to show you on the screen, was that I'm a structural engineer by training. Most of my effort has been in structures and reducing their embodied carbon, but my God, refrigerants in Africa, like even if you condition 50% of your floor area in this example, it could the refrigerant leakage can overwhelm your non-structural and structural emissions. So like it's kind of a new world I've been getting into. The access to low GWP refrigerants in Africa is very limited, and I think that's where I want to spend a bit of my time focusing. Anyway, I'll send a link so you can download this. It's we've given webinars to all of the engineers and architects in Rwanda, which is about 200 of them, and they were just like incredibly on board and keen to get involved. This isn't what I'm showing on the screen now isn't necessarily, well, it's not embodied carbon related, but it's just something I've been working on with our group, and it's super exciting because we're working with the government of Rwanda to expand Volcanoes National Park by 1,300 hectares, which I don't know if that's like the only time this has happened in the world, but you can't imagine it happening very often because of all the pressures that this, like the most densely populated country in Africa has. The fact that they're willing to try and expand the national park, and I think this is just like I didn't think I would see this like sort of happen through my work, and I just am super inspired by this. And we did use metrics to help demonstrate the argument, and basically understanding that the current system isn't nearly achieving 50% of ecosystem benefits, but with our proposed solutions, we can achieve up to 80% of the ecosystem benefits compared to the natural system. So anyway, that was something I just added on at the end because that got submitted on Monday, and yeah, should probably be a few years before anything gets enacted, but it's exciting anyway.
Great, thank you so much, James. And I also notice, oh, by the way, James, the work that you all are doing related to refrigeration in Africa would probably be of great interest to the MEP 2040 initiative commitment project. And I'd love to point you in that direction. And if you'd like to follow up with me and learn about how you can get involved with MEP 2040, I'd be delighted to do that. MEP 2040 is the Mechanical, Electrical, and Plumbing Engineers Challenge for Net Zero by 2040. And the website is mep2040.org. And that's a remarkable effort as well. The latest count that I have of the number of MEP firms that have signed up to join the MEP 2040 commitment is 80 major firms, most of them from around the world, but some of the most significant organizations in the building industry focused on MEP design and construction. So that's really interesting. We don't have Luc Leung on the call this morning to talk about that, but I'm on that steering committee as well. So I also noticed that on the call this morning, there is a box labeled Center for Science and Technology Innovations, and I'm guessing that might be Ms. Cecilia Wandiga. And if it is, or if it is not, whoever it is, would you please say hello to us and just chime in? I know that you all have made a connection with Mass Design as well very recently.
Hi, yes, it's me. I'm here, sorry. I'm in an awkward place, so I have but we have made a fantastic connection with Mass Design and listening in terms of all the technical translation that needs to happen. We have also made a connection. There's a German company, and I'll post in the link. They are called Start Somewhere, very appropriate. They have hollow concrete twist blocks. And the reason that they created this is because the technical skill to do zero joint or very low. So let me put it this way. The traditional way of building with concrete and stone in Kenya is to put 3 mattresses of mortar in between each layer. So you probably spend more on the mortar than you do on the actual building material. And that's, it's a way, so it's a transformation that needs to happen. if you want to do what they here are calling zero joint or zero mortar construction, you pay 5 times as much on the labor. So, and then the other problem we have is that 80% of the population that needs the affordable housing are living in what we call informal settlements. To put that in an American context, it is not that they're living on public housing grounds, it's that they're squatting on land that is actually designated as not to be developed or had been designated for other purposes. So the reason that they're then using these twist blocks is that in the event that construction starts and there is an implementation that says this building has to come down, you just untwist and move the entire building. And the blocks are up to 25 psi, or sorry, so you can build up to, say, floors different from first consecutive layers, and build that, and that's as much as those bricks are authorized to do per the German standard. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I forgot to say that you're calling in from Nairobi, Kenya. Is that right?
Correct.
That's right. So
we're right now, I think you're 1 hour ahead. So we're now normally we're 7 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time, but right now we're 8.
Oh boy. Right. Well, thank you so much for being on the call this morning. And lastly, in our morning, I don't have Webley Bowles from the New Building Institute on the agenda, but Webley, if you're there, would you like to say a word and say something about what NBI is doing these days before we close? And I think she just signed off. So with that, then that is the end of our meeting. Thank all of you for sticking around. It was really great to see you all, and a rich, detailed, and overwhelmingly encouraging set of pieces of news from around the world. So in the spirit that we've just witnessed, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you again in a couple months. Bye-bye then. Take care.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.